for an ordinance amending Chapter 8, Kauai County Code 1987 as amended relating to agriculture districts.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve initially? Well, we're
So
going to
moved.
defer.
Second.
Thank you. Members, you might have gotten the memo from Planning Department. Both our Deputy Planning Director is out, and so is our Planning Director. And they've asked for a deferral on this item. So if I could, unless there's any further questions, Councilmember Ikemura.
In a sense, it's good because I think we really need to be briefed on the whole process by which IAL lands have been designated, and I know I'm overdue in developing some questions for that, but I think it's very important background that we know how those lands were identified, because now we're proposing to regulate them differently. And so, and I think there are other issues if preservation of ag land is really what we're trying to achieve. So
Thank you.
I'll work on some of that.
Thank you. Yeah, if there's any further questions, I know Councilmember Ikemura has some questions on IAL, but anything else regarding this bill, it'll come back in 2 weeks to this committee. Any other discussion? If not, public testimony. We'll suspend the rules at this time. Felicia.
Felicia Cowden for the record. I'm really glad that this is coming under discussion, and I'm hoping and I'm wondering if much outreach has happened to either the Farm Bureau or the Hawaii Farmers Union United or even the Kauai Board of Realtors. I think sometimes topics like this come up and they get decided and it moves quickly past, and I think it's really important that we are engaging the community, because this is, I think, long overdue, but what needs to be handled correctly with the key stakeholders, and why I say the Board of Realtors also, or some of the developers, is because a lot of times changes happen and they don't even know, and I think that it is really important that when we sell ag land that's intended to be ag land, that it actually becomes ag land. And I think that there are ways that we can make a difference in it. Sometimes when people put in a permit application, you have to have a farm plan, but that they don't need to show any implementation of it when they get the final inspection. So looking at it comprehensively, how we can actually manage this in a way that it intends to cradle real food production and then not punish, this more lighter weight way of doing it that maybe some people want to do. It seems like we have three very different ways of managing ag land. Some is very serious commercial agriculture that gets put in the same pot as the small diversified farmers that get put in the same pot as people who really want more of an estate. So that what we get where we're choosing to have it is what's intended, and that one doesn't fight with another group, or at least that they're all given their due. And I'm just going to expose my bias in that, I really do think that we need to be growing food for people on the island. And so that group seems to be in a position to really struggle, both to be able to have the farm workers on it, to have enough people on the land that the pigs don't come and ravage everything that's needed, and when they can really have the diversified farming at a level they can afford to do it. So I thank you for having it in here. I ask that we get good stakeholders in there, as well as the people from planning, and to produce, publish it out. So I'm actually relieved that it's deferred, and I was saddened to see that there isn't anybody here to be addressing this issue who it would be impacting, other than myself, I suppose. But I'm a neighborhood farmer, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else like to testify for a second time? Okay, I'll call the meeting back to order. Any other further discussion before I ask for deferral?
Just have a question, because, and I apologize, I don't know if I remember this being briefed or not, but so the Ag 1 would be basically IAL lands, and they would be restricted to one dwelling per unit, regardless of the size.
That's what I'm reading. Yeah.
And then the Ag 2 would allow one dwelling unit and an additional dwelling unit for every 3 acres.
Which I believe is the current structure.
But I guess my question, as far as farm worker housing, so as it relates to IAL lands, how does that work? How does that play into that? I mean, are they able to construct farm worker housing on IAL lands?
I think that was some of the questions that actually came up. I didn't get an answer about that. It came up at the first run on this, so I was hoping that they would be here, but that's why they've asked for a deferral to answer
And
that.
I can wait. I just thought if anyone knew that answer, we could, but I'll formulate some questions as
I
well.
appreciate that. Councilmember Ikemura.
Well, I believe it would apply to all ag lands, farm worker housing. But whether it's sufficient to promote the kind of farming that Felicia mentioned is one of the questions. I just want to say that I think Felicia's comment is well taken in terms of the outreach to different groups so that they understand what is being proposed. And I actually would like to see it way before the bill comes to the council, because the timeline when it comes to the council is so short. If in the development of the bill, the planning department, or even at the planning commission level, there was the outreach, it takes time for the community to really get the word and begin to grasp what is being proposed. And by engaging them at the earlier stages of a bill's development, you will have many more people here today, and many more people involved and informed and able to give comment. And that's part of the reason we took 3 years to do the farm worker housing, or even the barking dogs law, because we were consulting with the hunters, consulting with these different groups to make sure any bill that we were developing would work for these various groups, and that we got their input. And so I would hope that in the future, that kind of groundwork would be done before the bill comes to the council. I also want to say that the constitutional amendment that was made in 1978, which mandated the passage of by the legislature of a bill to identify important ag lands, had as its main purpose the production of food, which is at the level that our governor and others are speaking about. It's about moving the needle on the 90% of imported food that we now get and depend on to feed ourselves and the visitors. And, the question of what is going to move that needle is really related to ag lands and how we regulate and manage ag lands. And my sense of the Ag 2 that is being proposed here is that it's just going to be business as usual. It's mainly going to be country estates. And if that's what it's going to be, I asked them how many acres of all lands that are presently zoned ag are in Ag 1 and how many acres are in Ag 2, and they couldn't tell us at first reading. But those kinds of questions are really important so we understand the impact that this bill could have.
Any further discussion? Vice Chair Kagawa.
Yeah, for me, I feel no value in jumping to conclusions about, planning and as far as what they did. They asked for a deferral. The reason they asked for a deferral is they're going to be here at the next meeting and answer the questions. And, again, I don't see the value of jumping to assumptions or conclusions and when they're not here. And it's just wait. I mean, it's 2 weeks. Let's just wait till they're here and ask them the questions. I don't see any value of jumping to conclusions when they're not here to answer. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? I'll just say I did actually forward it to the Farm Bureau and other organizations upon receipt of it. So some of these stakeholders do have the bill in front of them. I too am a little bit concerned that they weren't part of maybe the front end of the discussion. I think that is part of what the planning department is now underway with. So I look forward to the discussion and working on this bill further. If no other discussion, can I have a motion to defer this item?
Defer.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion passes. This concludes the business of the planning committee. The planning committee is now adjourned.